On January 29th, the Dune logo leaked, and it is glorious, showing just the kind of innovation and creativity that Dune has the potential to embody. That, of course, came on the heels of the first social media reactions to early footage from a week ago. And if these reactions are to be believed, Dune is shaping up to be a masterpiece, something to be mentioned in the same breath as Lord of the Rings and Star Wars, back when that meant something. But can we trust these reactions? Because other such reactions would have us believe Green Lantern would be epic, and that Batman v Superman was worthy of standing ovations. In this editorial, I will begin by giving you my take on just that, before sharing some further details I've heard about which direction Dune will be taking. And finally, what Dune means to me, and what kind of coverage you can expect from this channel leading up to the movie. Before we begin though, if you like the content provided in this video, then leave a like and subscribe. And in the process, make sure to indicate that you want notifications on all videos. We'd also greatly appreciate if existing subscribers will take a moment to check that you are still subscribed and that you too get notifications on all videos. With that out of the way, let's dive in. The marketing machine for Dune is in the process of gearing up, which we saw evidence of on January 21st, when the first social media reactions to actual Dune footage found their way online. Through these reactions, we learned that the cast looks phenomenal in their costumes, the sets are enormous, same scope as Blade Runner 2049 and Arrival, there's a mix of grimy realism and dreamlike imagery, Timothée Chalamet as Paul looks excellent, Rebecca Ferguson looks eerie, Dave Bautista looks like a monster as the Beast, and at least as important, the cinematography looks excellent. In addition to the above, the Dune footage also included small looks at Jason Momoa as Duncan Idaho, Stellan Skarsgård as Baron Harkonnen, and further confirmation that the actor playing Kynes will be a surprise. That would be because, as I told you in the previous video, the character is now reimagined as a black woman, and from what I gather, the role has been slightly beefed up. But getting back to the social media reaction story, the comments by Brian Clement in particular went viral, as according to him, this movie will blow people's minds the way Lord of the Rings did 20 years ago, and the way Star Wars did 40 years ago. But can we really believe that? Most of the press coverage even explicitly stated Warner recently screened footage for select individuals. That is key here. Those select individuals were hand-picked, for this was no public screening. You weren't invited, only those that could be trusted to have the desired reaction to it were. There have been numerous examples of this before, where select early influencer reactions praise any given movie in question as the best thing since sliced bread. Yet upon release, moviegoers may find that the movie didn't quite live up to the hype. That being said, I honestly wouldn't be too surprised if Clement's assertion that Dune will blow audiences away, Star Wars and Lord of the Rings style, actually has merit. Because this incarnation of Dune, at least on paper, has all the ingredients required to do so in place. From the source material, to the cast, and to the director, the great Denis Villeneuve. Denis Villeneuve? Alright, Denis Villeneuve. I heard you the first time. Anyway, the point is, on a general basis, you should take such early praise as the part of the marketing campaign that it is. But every now and then, a movie comes out that does live up to the hype and expectations, and Dune just might be one of them. Everything I've heard certainly suggests that to be the case. Before moving on, know that what I'm about to share with you is information that has been relayed to me by sources I'm not at liberty to reveal. Therefore, nothing of what I'm about to say can at this point in time be independently verified, so you must take it with a grain of salt and treat it as rumor. With that mandatory health warning out of the way, let's move on with some more alleged Dune revelations. In our previous Dune video, I could reveal that Lady Jessica and the Bene Gesserit Sisterhood will be given an expanded role in the movie. Some of you appeared to have issues with that, worrying that this might signify that Dune was headed down the very ideopolitically charged road where franchises go to die. But really, I haven't heard anything to indicate that that is the case. The emphasis is placed on the Bene Gesserit because the story demands it. Dune has long had a reputation for being unfilmable. The source material is stacked with story, subtext, and world building. There is so much going on, so much story being conveyed on so many levels, that for his adaptation, David Lynch had to resort to both opening narration, continued narration here and there, as well as characters thinking out loud, and audiences at the time still didn't get what was going on. There may be some level of narration in this movie, but for the most part, Villeneuve found another way to convey the story, themes, and backstory, and the Bene Gesserit are the key to that. From what I gather, Jessica will, at times, be the point of view character, as she initiates her son Paul into what the Bene Gesserit have been doing the past thousands of years. And it is through that lens, among a few others, that the viewer will be exposed to the Dune universe, for there just might be references to characters and events that only happened in the later novels as well. In short, through the Bene Gesserit, Denis Villeneuve made the unfilmable filmable. Also, one of the key criticisms aimed at David Lynch's Dune is that in it, Paul Atreides literally is a messiah. One whose divine will can make it spontaneously rain on a planet that up until that point had no precipitation, which I guess is the Dune equivalent of parting the ocean. The people in David Lynch's Dune love their messiah, their Kwisatz Haderach, and everything is awesome by the end. That whole rain thing aside, this is not wholly unlike the ending of the original book, but Frank Herbert had a larger story in mind. Because over the larger narrative across multiple books, it became clear that what he meant to say all along was,
"Now you listen here! He's not the Messiah! He's a very naughty boy! Now go away!"
The upcoming movie takes a stand closer to the author's intention in this matter, and again, this is where the Bene Gesserit come in handy. For instance, both in the book and the new movie, the Messiah prophecies the Fremen believe with such conviction were deliberately planted by the Bene Gesserit thousands of years before for their own manipulative purposes. Not just on Arrakis, but on every distant planet with a population prone to superstition. They're disaffectionately called Bene Gesserit witches for a reason. To me, this is yet another indication that Villeneuve understands the source material and is getting it right. I won't claim being an expert on all things Dune, but I'm not a complete novice either. I haven't spoken too much yet of what Dune is to me, or how I came to discover Dune in the first place, which is actually a kind of fun story. I'm not much of a gamer these days, but I was back in the 90s, when Sega Mega Drive, that's the Genesis in the US, was all the rage. One of my favorite games on it was Earthworm Jim. That led me to the Earthworm Jim animated series, and in it, Jim has a sidekick. This sidekick, Peter Puppy, had a mantra he repeated in, scary situations.
"I must not fear. Fear is the mind killer. Fear is the little death that brings total oblivion."
I was just a stupid kid at the time, but still found this mantra to be attention-grabbing. I knew it had to be from somewhere else, because it was too good that it could possibly have been written for something as goofy, albeit fun, as Earthworm Jim. At the time, Google hadn't been invented yet, and I didn't have the internet yet either, which was still in its infancy back then anyway, so it actually took a few years before I happened to come across the information that the quote was actually from Frank Herbert's Dune. That alone didn't make me sufficiently interested to check either the movie or the novel out, but it did make me more receptive whenever I came across more references to either. Through such references, I came to learn that there was a movie. It was made by the guy who made Twin Peaks, and it was a huge bomb. But the book it was based upon was one of the greatest books ever written. Still didn't seek it out though. But then, in the winter of 2003, I was in an antiquarian bookstore looking for something else entirely, when I happened to come across a beaten-up old British reprint of the original novel, obviously released in conjunction with the David Lynch movie. It's this one right here, still got it. I was taken in by the stunning artwork, which is of course the theatrical poster for the David Lynch movie. And since I now happened to have come across it, I picked it up and proceeded to read it during a stay at my family's cabin in the mountains that winter. The contrast between the cold and the snow outside, and the heat and the sand in the story couldn't be greater. I don't know if that added to the experience, but I had an absolute blast reading it. It took me a good 100 pages or so to fully get into it, but it was and remains one of the best books I ever read. I know scattered bits and pieces of what happened next, but I've never read any of the sequels, or the prequels by Brian Herbert and Kevin Anderson for that matter. That is an omission I will now rectify, because just based on the strength of that original novel, this is a universe I'm fully invested in. In light of the upcoming movie, I have therefore decided that I will read all the books in the Dune universe. Even the Brian Herbert and Kevin Anderson prequels I know many hardcore fans scoff at. I'll judge them for myself, for I intend to read it all in chronological order, and I'll take you along my journey through the Dune universe, reviewing each book as I go. Would you like to come with me on that journey? If so, then be sure to subscribe, help share this video, and let me know your thoughts on all things Dune in the comments.